Breaking news. At 0412 Coordinated Universal Time, instruments across 3 continents registered an anomaly that should not exist. Within a span of 90 seconds, an object catalogued as routine, inert, and fully predictable violated every model we had built around it. Today, the impossible just happened. What began as a standard monitoring cycle turned into the most tightly restricted data event of the decade. Several feeds went dark, others continued recording but were never shown publicly. This changes everything we thought we knew. If you're here for serious cosmic updates, for the kind of discoveries that rewrite textbooks rather than headlines, make sure you like this video and subscribe. What you're about to hear is not speculation. It's a reconstruction of what the data actually shows and why some of it was never explained on camera. Just hours ago, something happened out there, far beyond the orbit of Mars, involving the interstellar object known as 3I Atlas. And for the first time since its discovery, silence from official channels became louder than any confirmation.
When events like this unfold, the first question is always the same. How do we know this is real? The answer begins with redundancy. At the moment of the anomaly, 3I Atlas was under active observation by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the European Space Agency's Near-Earth Object Coordination Center, the Atacama Large Millimeter Array in Chile, and the James Webb Space Telescope operating from the Sun-Earth L2 point. Ground-based optical confirmation came from Mauna Kea in Hawaii and the Canary Islands, while radio data was simultaneously logged by facilities in South Africa and Western Australia. This wasn't a single instrument glitch, it was a chorus. Harvard's Center for Astrophysics had been running long baseline simulations on 3I Atlas for weeks. Caltech's computational astrophysics group was modeling its trajectory using 3 independent gravitational solvers. Hubble had been tasked with passive imaging to compare albedo changes over time. Every institution involved reached the same conclusion within minutes of the event. Something had changed. Not gradually, not statistically, abruptly. To understand why this matters, we need to rewind the clock. 48 hours before the incident, 3I Atlas was behaving exactly as predicted. Its heliocentric velocity was measured at 32.4 kilometers per second, well within the expected range for an interstellar object on a hyperbolic trajectory. Its thermal signature hovered around 142 Kelvin, consistent with a dormant, volatile pore body. Spectral analysis showed no unexpected emissions, just the faint reddish reflection typical of carbon-rich material exposed to cosmic radiation for millions of years. In other words, it was quiet. 26 hours later, a minor deviation appeared. The object's velocity increased by 0.18 kilometers per second. On its own, this could be explained by outgassing, except no corresponding gas plume was detected. No water vapor, no carbon monoxide, no dust tail. The acceleration had no visible cause. 11 hours after that, the color index shifted. Photometric data showed a sudden change in reflectivity across the near-infrared band. The surface of 3I Atlas appeared to darken, then brighten, as if its orientation or its surface properties had altered. Again, no debris, no fragmentation, no rotational instability. Then came the silence. At T-3 hours, radio monitoring stations recorded a drop in background noise around the object, not an increase. A decrease, a localized quieting of electromagnetic interference that extended nearly 12,000 kilometers in radius. Space, in effect, went still.
This is not something space does. At 0412 UTC, the main event occurred. Telemetry from James Webb showed a spike in mid-infrared emissions, peaking at wavelengths corresponding to temperatures above 900 Kelvin. For an object with no active nucleus, no internal heat source, and no proximity to the sun sufficient to cause thermal runaway, this was impossible. Even more troubling was the geometry of the emission. It wasn't diffuse, it was directional. A narrow cone of energy, lasting 4.6 seconds, oriented precisely 17.3 degrees off the object's velocity vector. No natural process produces that kind of precision. Almost simultaneously, gravitational sensors detected a perturbation, not a large one, just enough to be unmistakable. Nearby test particles, tracked via laser ranging, experienced a transient force equivalent to a mass increase of approximately 0.4%. Then it vanished. 3I Atlas had, for a moment, behaved as if it were heavier. And then NASA cut the live feed. Publicly, the explanation was technical maintenance. Privately, internal logs show emergency protocols were initiated across multiple departments. Engineers at the Deep Space Network reported unscheduled encryption of raw data streams. Analysts were instructed to work offline. No commentary was issued. But the data kept coming. Within 22 minutes of the event, Atacama registered a series of radio pulses originating from the object's position. They were faint but structured. Each pulse lasted exactly 1.37 seconds, separated by intervals of 2.74 seconds. The pattern repeated 7 times, paused for 11 seconds, then repeated again. Prime number ratios. This was no longer random. It was responding. A scientific investigation was launched immediately. Teams at Caltech began running reverse dynamic simulations, attempting to reconstruct the force vectors required to produce the observed acceleration. The answer was unsettling. Any natural mechanism capable of doing this would require either an internal energy source or an interaction with space-time itself beyond our current models. Spectroscopy revealed another anomaly. New absorption lines appeared in the object's spectrum, lines corresponding to no known element or compound. The closest match was theoretical, exotic states of matter, predicted but never observed, requiring pressures found only in neutron stars. Dr. Elena Markov, a computational physicist working with ESA, summarized the dilemma bluntly. "If this is natural," she said, "then our definition of natural is incomplete." Two camps formed almost immediately. The first argued for an extreme but still physical explanation. Perhaps 3I Atlas is a fragment of a long-dead stellar remnant, its interior composed of ultra-dense material capable of storing and releasing energy under specific conditions. Perhaps tidal stresses from the sun triggered a delayed reaction. These models were mathematically elegant and observationally unsupported. The second camp was quieter. They pointed to the symmetry of the pulses, the timing, the directional emission, the temporary mass fluctuation. They noted that the object had been inert for millions of years, then became active only after entering the inner solar system, only after being observed. This interpretation was not framed as extraterrestrial technology, not officially. Instead, it was labeled non-standard physics, unknown mechanisms, unclassified behavior. But behind closed doors, the language was different. 12 hours after the event, a second anomaly occurred. One of the faint fragments previously identified near 3I Atlas, thought to be debris from an ancient collision, simply vanished. Not dimmed, not drifted out of range, it disappeared across all wavelengths simultaneously: optical, infrared, radio, gravitational. Gone. There was no explosion, no energy release, no debris field. It was as if it had been switched off. At the same moment, Earth-based magnetometers detected a ripple, a subtle fluctuation of 0.6 nanoteslas, synchronized across stations in Finland, Canada, and Antarctica. Too weak to be dangerous, too coordinated to be coincidence. Satellites experienced brief orientation errors. Radio operators reported momentary blackouts on specific frequencies. Migratory birds altered flight paths by a few degrees, then corrected. Small effects, global reach. Inside mission control rooms, the mood shifted from confusion to something closer to reverence. Engineers stopped speaking. Analysts stared at screens, refreshing data that refused to change. Whatever had happened, it was over, for now. And then came the alignment. Orbital analysis showed that after the event, the trajectory of 3I Atlas adjusted by less than a fraction of a degree, but enough to bring it into a long-term geometric alignment with Earth and Jupiter. Not a collision course, not a threat, just an alignment that maximized observational visibility from our planet, as if it wanted to be seen. This is the moment where science usually pulls back, where caution overrides curiosity, where statements are delayed until certainty is achieved. But certainty may never come.
What we are witnessing may not be an end, but an invitation. For centuries, humanity has looked outward, assuming the universe was indifferent, that objects moved blindly, governed only by gravity and chance. But every so often, something happens that suggests a different possibility, that not everything is passive, that some things respond. 3i Atlas is still out there, still moving, still silent. For now. We don't know what it is, we don't know what it did, and we don't know why it stopped. But one thing is certain, the universe just reminded us that we are not finished learning, that the rules we rely on are provisional, and that somewhere beyond the edge of certainty, something is watching us watch it. What happens when it wakes up again? Subscribe to follow the next update. This story isn't over.